This is my presentation video to demonstrate my Max MSP patch. This is one of my artifacts from a guided unit, and the general thoughts behind it was that if you wanted to record Foley or randomise some sound effects, but you didn't necessarily have the studio space or the equipment to do so, something like this could be utilised. Basically what this is here is by itself a Foley application. What's here just now is basically a list of different footstep sounds on different surfaces. These are in a folder which is buried somewhere in the heart of my Mac, and basically this is the folder here for everything, and this is the patch itself. All of these folders relate to one of the options that you can pick from the drop down here. So essentially what you would do is you would decide which type of noise you wanted. Say it was a formal shoe on wood. You would basically just set your volumes on this, make sure that the speakers are on, and then a click of the button will show that we get a sound bite. Along with a random selection out of that folder, the sample chosen will have random EQ applied to it and volume randomization as well. Along with that, you also have the option of this randomization playback, which will basically determine how quickly or slowly the sample is played back, thus affecting the pitch of it, like this. Now, this section of the patch here is basically to allow you to drop in another folder if you want. If you don't want to use the footsteps, or you don't want to use anything that I've already recorded to go with this, this enables you to make a new folder, put the relevant sound effects that you want in there and drop it in, and it will automatically be loaded into the buffer responsible for playing these back. Now, from a user point of view, the last feature on this would be this section that I've left here in the presentation mode, which is basically allows you, if you double click on it, to select a MIDI controller, so that if you're working with a video or you want to have a more intuitive way of working with the patch, all you need to do is plug in your MIDI controller, select it from that drop down menu, and you can hit any key on the controller to trigger the random selection and playback of the effects. Now, what I've done here is I've set up a Pro Tools session separately, and I'm taking it from the second input on the interface here. So, if all goes to plan, I should be able to move this over here a little bit. I should be able to start recording in Pro Tools. Zoom in a little bit so you can see better, and use the MIDI keyboard to record the footsteps in. Okay, so that is basically how you would use the patch and how you would interact with it. The other side of this is basically what goes on in the background. It took me a while to become used to Max MSP because I hadn't used it before, but this is the general patch that I've used here to create the effect that I'm looking for. Some bits and pieces of the patch are a little bit tidier than others because I was getting used to how to use things as I was going along. This section here is related to the MIDI control, where basically this button here, which is the one that you could see on the presentation view, is again what you would use to pick your MIDI controller. And it goes through a series of these other objects, and basically just strips the note on signal out and replaces that instead of the bang here, which is the button that you can use if you don't have a MIDI controller. When this happens, this basically goes through here this random object will pick a random number based on the number of sound bytes in the particular folder that's been chosen, which is selected over here. And this will change depending on the amount of information that that folder holds. So, for instance, I think this one, yep, that has slightly more in it. It's got 6 there, so it'll pick a number between 1 and 6. That corresponds to one of the samples, which will be played back. Basically, that comes through this process, goes out here through the poly tilde playback, and this is where the randomization happens. Basically, random number scaled from 0 to 1000 in the form of minus 0.1 or 0.1 of the original playback speed. And what we can do is we can bring that down to nothing, so that basically at the end of it, all we're doing is adding on the original playback speed. Or if we bring it back up and we hit this number is incorporated into this, and you'll get a larger or lesser playback speed depending on what random number is generated and scaled to. Now, for the section here with the EQ, this is one of the first things that I'd done on the patch, and I wasn't entirely sure how to use some of the objects. I wasn't sure how some of them even existed, to be honest with you. So what I've basically done here is what this scale object does by itself, in which I've selected a random amount of numbers that I want to be affected by. I've added on what the minimum is that I want it to be, and I've had to scale that down to an acceptable value that the Q control or the gain control, frequency control wanted, depending on the parameters of the object. To be honest with you, this is really the gist of what the app does. At the moment, the app is monophonic, which ideally I would have had it as a polyphonic one, but I was having some issues with it, and I decided that given the amount of functionality that is with it just now, I'd run out of time, and I was happy with what I'd achieved at this point. So yeah, this is my demonstration / presentation of my Max MSP patch. Thank you.